All righty, welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach supporting online information entrepreneurs throughout the US and the world. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. I am super excited to welcome Hesha Abrams today. Welcome, Hesha.
Hello, pleasure to be here.
So good to have you. I know we connected just a few short weeks ago, and I loved our conversation. I love your topic. For those of you listening, Hesha is a fellow attorney. She's got a really fascinating background. This topic is one that I actually consider to be the most important topic that you can cover, whether it is in business, in personal life, and we'll get more into why this is such an important topic, but it really, if you stick around for this conversation, you're going to learn some things. It will be one that could really help you achieve a powerful transformation in your life and your business in more ways than one. So Hesha Abrams is an internationally acclaimed master attorney mediator with a unique talent to manage big egos and strong personalities, and a keen ability to create synergy amongst the most diverse personality types, driving them toward agreement. And in case you do not live in the legal world, I can attest that there are plenty of big egos and challenging personality types. Not all, right? I love so many of my colleagues, and like Hesha and others who really do amazing work that actually goes well beyond, quote unquote, just the legal landscape. There are some folks that earn us a reputation. So anyways, Hesha is on a mission, and that's what we're here today to talk about. By holding the calm, Hesha uses innovative approaches to deal making, specializing in crafting solutions for complex or difficult matters. During her 30-plus year career, Hesha has resolved thousands of cases, both large and small, in every conceivable area, creating settlements worth billions of dollars, saving clients billions more, including a dispute over the secret recipe for Pepsi. Holding the Calm, which is also the name of her book, is her insightful, practical, easy-to-use toolkit forged in the trenches of resolving human conflict. Its secrets will enable you to know how to approach every situation to prevent explosions, disarm conflicts, and reduce drama. Holding the Calm is Hesha's contribution to help make our world, businesses, and relationships less acrimonious and more harmonious. Welcome, Hesha.
My pleasure. My pleasure. This is one of those, why should the professionals have all the secrets?
Right?
Why get to be out there for everybody?
Hallelujah. Say it louder for the attorneys in the back. Say it louder for the attorneys in the back. Really, or any professional, right? That thinks,
anybody. Yes. Anybody. Honestly, your secretary or paralegal has to deal with more garbage because they're blind. And if they don't handle things well, you can lose a client. So let's talk self-interest.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think so often professionals really in any industry can fall into the trap of like, we're supposed to have all the answers. We need to protect the information that we have, and it's, when it comes to legal, and I know we talked about this a little bit on our first conversation, like I just feel like our industry has gotten it so backwards in many ways, and particularly when it comes to the access to justice gap for multiple consumers of legal services, right? It's been such a traditional, slow-moving industry where barriers to entry are high. Right. And it shouldn't be that way. But I think it's challenged for a lot of people to work within the confines of a profession that's heavily regulated, right? That has certain rules that I think in some ways really dissuade creativity. And for me, my whole mission has been about how do we make legal support and really principles and because it goes beyond legal support, but how do we make, I'll just say support in general, more accessible to small businesses and entrepreneurs who are not well served in the traditional legal marketplace. And, if you've ever played the game of telephone, you know how quickly things can go wrong, whether it's in a conversation, in a scenario involving multiple humans, right? And then you add any kind of stressful interaction or, situations where people are really at odds. And I think, you've got massive potential, including just in business generally, to really have a huge opportunity to develop skills in the area that you're an expert at.
Well said. For those listening, I'm hoping we don't just have new lawyers listening. I hope we have
No. And this is not a podcast for lawyers. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs.
For entrepreneurs.
Yes, we probably have some lawyers listening, but what we do on this podcast is we're really talking about the business building journey, how to create a business that has the kind of impact that you want with your clients, in the industry that you're in your professional landscape. And bigger than that, how do you create a business and a life that you love?
Well, and protect yourself so it doesn't get destroyed by one stupid mistake.
Yeah,
you could have worked years to create something, and one foolish mistake, you didn't get a correct release, or an HR problem wasn't handled well, or a customer or a shareholder, and everything you worked for can be ruined. On the other hand, you can so overprotect yourself that it's like a kid in a snowsuit where they're so bundled up they can't play. And so having good legal advice is very important to know when and how to do that. But for yourself, having a good sense of, I want to protect myself, but not protect myself so much that I can't do anything.
That's right.
I remember I mediated a case once with Sears, and the manufacturer for Sears Roebuck. I was young. I was in my early 30s. And I remember that was almost 35 years ago. And I remember to this day, him telling me, best is the enemy of better. And that bothered me. I spent a lot of time thinking about that. How can that be? Everything I'm doing is trying to be best. What are you talking about? High standards, superlative excellence, all that kind of stuff. Best is the enemy of better. And he is so right in 90% of the time, and how you want to try to get something done. And one of the things I talk about in the book is, when you're negotiating or when you're in conflict management, I call it creating small, winnable victories. Because think about the issues that are dividing our country right now. They're huge, gigantic issues: gun control, abortion, immigration, politics. I mean, they're huge. They don't affect the normal person's life. And so how do you resolve things? Not from the center head on. You disagree with me, so I think you're an idiot. We can't come to terms on anything because we think differently. No. You dissolve them from the outside in. You never get things head on, especially when it's high conflict, high profile, high stakes. Never, ever, ever. So that's some of the stuff we'll be talking about in this hour, and how you approach this, and how do you keep whatever is your special brilliance, your special, unique, entrepreneurial contribution. For some people, their contribution is really, they want it to be more altruistic, but they like to make a living at it.
Oh, totally.
People, it's no, I want to make a lot of money. I want to be super successful. Okay, I feel that way. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's healthy. But then, do we then cut out and destroy the people? Do we destroy the environment? Everything has this balance to it. And if you're smart, you're on the 60-40 of the balance. The 60 can be on either side of the median line, depending on which way you prioritize your product, your services, what you're doing. But if you're smart, you always have an eye out for the next opportunity, and an eye out for the next boulder in your road, and an eye out for the next snake in your path. Those are the three things you got to worry about in order to actually make it in the long game, which of course is, that's the game, is making it.
Oh, totally. And this, the reason I launched this podcast actually was because COVID was literally, when I had the idea for it, I mean, I'm in Seattle. We were ground zero for COVID. And I thought, nobody is talking about what is about to hit millions of small businesses across the United States and around the world, and what this impact will have on small businesses. And so I just really wanted to create a place where we were having conversations about mindset, about longevity, about long-term perspective in the business building path, and especially for folks who are very mission driven and also conscious entrepreneurs. They want to build a successful business, but part of it is so that they can have tremendous impact for good, right? So we're talking to folks who are on a mission to build successful businesses and have some altruism in there where they, have something that they deeply, deeply care about as their significant impact in the world. So, and I believe those things can go hand in hand. And I think we're seeing evidence throughout the marketplace that impact, including social impact oriented businesses, can be even more profitable and more successful than many of
and how it's done though. That's the big key, is how it's done. The restaurant business is highly dangerous. I mean, some crazy percentage, 97 or 98% of all new restaurants fail. And that's because people get a good idea or have a good recipe, but they don't know how to do the business part of it. Yes. And I say that with business, it's so important to know your strength and your weakness, and you get support for your weakness. So let me can I tell a story and share it?
Totally, please do.
So this is not in the book, by the way, Holding the Calm, the secret to resolving conflict and diffusing tension. So, and this is afterwards, and I actually heard it on NPR's Hidden Brain, but it has so much application to what we're talking about now that it just came into me to share this with our listeners. So there was a couch company that sold bespoke, customized couches for $20,000 to $30,000 for a couch. Okay. Custom fabric, piping, you can choose the size, the arms, the legs, all this kind of stuff. People would go through it with their designers, clicking away, designing, having all the fun. And at the end, a huge percentage of them wouldn't close the sale. They were flummoxed. What could be happening? And so what the human brain does is we operate like a car. We put more gas on it, or we put a brake on it. For most entrepreneurs, you've got a fire in your belly, or you would not be an entrepreneur. So what do? You step on the gas. So this company, more sales, more marketing, more social media, spending money, because you got to spend money to make money, right? Didn't change a doggone thing. Finally, somebody was smart enough to say, let's hold the calm. Well, I didn't say that, of course, but yes. And let's put the brakes on. Let's diagnose what the barriers are and what's going on. So they had somebody call every single person who had gone up to the point of sale and didn't complete, and very politely, as a survey, ask them why they didn't do it. You want to know the number one overwhelming reason why people that could afford a $20,000 to $30,000 couch did not complete the sale? They didn't know what to do with the old couch.
Oh, man.
Shocking. Now the solution is so easy. You buy a new one, take away the old one. No problem. No need for sales, no need for money, no need for nothing. It's absolutely brilliant. And it is one of the things we do in Holding the Calm is it can take 1,000 people to build a building and one moron with a stick of dynamite, and everything you built is lost. So paying attention to not having conflict. And I named the book title is a little longer than I would like, and I did it on purpose. It's Holding the Calm, the secret to resolving conflict and diffusing tension. So why did I add that little corollary there? Because 100% of conflict, 100% of it starts with tension.
Starts with tension. Yeah.
And the tension can be, or it can be, That's ugly tension. That's really bad too, because you can't diagnose. You don't know what the heck is going on. So,
right. And for those of you who are
so
not
critical,
right, those of you who are not watching the video, it reminds me of my sister who's in sales and is a master at reading body language, right? So Hesha just folded her arms and kind of sat back, like put distance in between, right? And made a more of a closed off face. And it's critical to, yes. And even in business, because one of the things I talk about regularly is looking for red flag scenarios and red flag clients, right? It's these little things that are signposts along the way, like, something's not quite on track, or I just got a signal that's a little weird. Somebody's unhappy with something, right?
And how do I fix it? So this is the analogy to use. The next book I write, I might have to call it spaghetti sauce, because everyone's going to love this analogy. Everyone has dropped spaghetti sauce on the kitchen counter. You take a sponge and you wipe it up. It's no big deal. You leave it overnight, you're scraping it off with a spatula. Leave it 3 or 4 months and it's old and moldy and nasty. That, my friends, is tension and conflict. And we all know we should wipe it up with a sponge when it's wet. We know that. I know you're upset with me. I should discuss it with you, but we don't. Why? I don't know how. I'm afraid of you. I let sleeping dogs lie. Why would I open Pandora's box? Maybe it'll go away. I don't have time.
My human nervous system is just flooded, right? Or I think so often people shift into, whether it's fully fight or flight or just the initial phase of fear, like, oh, what will happen if, and they just shut down. It's easier to try to walk away or just hope it's going to go away than just dealing with it. And it never does.
It never. Think about anyone that you've had a long-term conflict with in your family or a neighbor. You remember that nasty thing they said, or the thing they didn't do, or they didn't keep their word. You remember that. It's like a nut squirreled away for the winter. And the whole point is, we know we should take care of it. I don't wanna. That's one of the things about holding the calm, is the way I wrote the book is I did 20 tools in 20 chapters, each one with a bunch of stories and anecdotes and sentence stems to make it easy. So you pick 1 or 2 and say, that's how I'm going to handle it. And it makes life so much easier because you aren't afraid, because you go, oh, well, I can just do that. And it makes it, the beauty is, like, one of the things with the couch story. There's a guy named Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. They were psychologists, and they got a Nobel Prize in economics for proving that the human being is not a rational consumer. And some crazy percentage of the time, like close to 90%, it's not that we're trying to win, it's that we're trying to not lose. So just imagine going into a negotiation with anybody, an employer, a supplier, contractor, anybody, and you're thinking they're trying to win. You know, the whole thing, win-win problem solving and all that kind of junk. 90% of the time, they're not trying to win. They're trying to not lose. And if you think of it that way, it completely shifts how you're going to approach it and what your gimmies are going to be and how you're going to handle something. How can you let them not lose? Means you can still win on stuff you need to do because you are aware of that. And in the book, I give a couple of stories about that. Then instead of saying to someone, with the finger pointing at you, I'll say, you know what, that reminds me of a story. And all my stories are 1 minute or less. And they're ones I use hundreds and thousands of times. So I know they work. And you tell the story, and then people will go, and then they draw their own conclusions and their own understanding of it. Now it becomes theirs, as opposed to you being Mr. or Mrs. Smarty Pants and you telling us how to do it. You could be 100% right. It doesn't matter. They don't listen that way. They don't learn.
No. Yeah, so many good examples in that little short blip. The not losing part, right? It's so interesting because you even think about human buying behavior, and so often it's to avoid or stop pain, right? Is a stronger driver than even driving towards a positive outcome. And from the standpoint even of attorneys who have to engage clients or customers, right? That I've learned through talking with thousands of small business owners, so often what keeps them from getting legal support in the first place is the fear that the attorney will take advantage of them, right? Again, this whole losing thing.
To worry about that, because the attorney has a self-interest also. The attorney has billable hours. The attorney needs to make money. And so in that first meeting, you have to assess whether there's a commonality of interests values. And if you go in and say, I'm so angry, I want to crush them into the ground, I want to, go after them like this, you can. That's totally okay. You will pay for that.
Yeah.
If you go in and say, I want a problem-oriented solution, I want to diagnose and I want to figure out what we can do and get out of here net to where less time and money, I'm out of here, you're going to attract a different kind of lawyer. And I'm not saying either one is better or worse. There's times when you need a mercenary. There's times when someone's coming after you hard, and the best defense is an offense. You need to be able to do that. But then how do you control the attorney? How do you manage it? What do you do? Holding the calm techniques are fantastic with that, because they're human beings. And I'll tell you, I may be mediating with big people. I mean, I mediate big, huge companies all the time. And some guy's wearing a $10,000 suit. He's got a $25,000 Rolex on his arm. And late at night, you know what we're talking about? His idiot brother-in-law or his kid's coach that won't let something happen, and sort of asking for my advice of how to make that.
Same people problems. Same people problems.
People.
Yeah.
I don't care you're wearing a $10 t-shirt or a $10,000 suit. It's bumper car egos all the way. And that's why I wrote this book, because I want people to have access to how to handle this stuff.
Because obviously you've got phenomenal experience, right? You've got endless stories that are demonstrations of like how these principles work. What point did you reach where you were like, okay, I've got to write a book? Can you talk to me about what actually spurred this book into action?
Easily. I've made literally 10,000 speeches in my life. That's not an exaggeration. And every time I would make a speech, people would always go, my God, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. Who had time to write a book? I'm busy.
I'll just squeeze it in here.
It's just not going to happen. And then right at the beginning of COVID, I had to have a hysterectomy, and knock on wood, thank God, everything turned out fine. But I was grounded for 6 weeks. I went, okay. And the book just poured out of me. And what I wanted to do is, what do I do for normal people that need to know how to solve tension, problem solve, resolve conflict, prevent conflict, that's easy and accessible, that you don't need a master's degree, you don't need some PhD, you don't need to take a master's class in something. What can they do that's a quick 2-hour read that can make their life richer and better, that they can do right now? And that's what I hunted for when I found a publisher, is they all want to charge a lot of money and make hardbacks. I said, no, I want this like 15, 16 bucks. I want a papackback. I want it a 2-hour read. I want it easy for people so that you can use these tools right now. Why do we not have that? It's kind of like we're cavemen and cavewomen shoving food in our mouth. And I want to say, here's a fork, here's a knife, here's chopsticks. Like you can do this. And I've done this thousands and thousands of times. And now at the stage of my career, I mean, I only deal with really big stuff. So I'll have somebody say, I want $500 million. And the defendant will say, here's 50,000, go pound sand. Now, I settle those all the time. How do I settle them? It's not because I'm smarter than all the fancy pants in the room. I deal with the top people. It's not because I'm more clever or I've come up with something they didn't have. It's that I know this game. I know human beings. I know how to move it around. I know how to get the temperature down. I know how to raise the temperature up when it needs to get done. Chapter 1 of the book is speak into the ears that are hearing you. You don't speak to an introvert the same way you speak to an extrovert. No, you don't speak to a visual, auditory, or kinesthetic learner. And I give a quick, easy way in the book of how to know what that is. It's minor adaptations, sort of like I love the 5 love languages, that book. I thought that was just fantastic. It's like that for business, for interpersonal communications. And I would talk to you differently than I would talk to, somebody else. But what does that require? First of all, I got to stop. I have to see Heather.
Pay attention.
I have to look at Heather. I have to see what's important to you. What are you trying to not lose? What are you trying to win? Even though your mouth is telling me this, it's not how you're acting. So what seems to really be important? So I come at you with curiosity rather than hostility. And now I've got the neuroscience of the bias of reciprocity working for me. And I do a little bit about neuroscience in the book. I kind of, neuroscience for dummies is how I look at it. So it's like easy. But how do human beings relate? Why is it that they'll have mediated and they didn't get it settled and they'll come to me and I get it settled? I have a different approach. I try it differently. I give people what I call a WOW, a way out with dignity. I tell people that everyone listens to the same radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Yeah.
People will say, how do you do that? I go, I follow the money. If somebody says it's a matter of principle, I know 90% of the time it's about the money. So what does that mean? So what does the money represent to you?
Yeah.
I may settle a case with a man of the year dinner or a charitable contribution because all of a sudden that became more significant, right? I had a case once, this isn't even in the book, I'm just thinking about it now, where these two guys have been business partners together for like 30 years. They were like brothers. And each one of them had helped the other one cheat on his taxes. One of them helped him cheat out his wife when he got divorced and hide assets. I mean, a level of, oh my God, was happening, right?
Yeah.
So they had a huge real estate empire, $30–40 million. So we get all that divided and we were down to the last, trying to remember now, the last $100,000. And it was just, it's $100,000 out of like a $30–40 million estate. The whole deal was going to fall apart over it. So fine, they hated each other so badly. So finally, I turned to one of them. And if I had said, let's make a charitable contribution and be altruistic, pshaw. But what I did, because I looked at what's the self-interest, is I said to the first guy, you hate his guts. What if we made him donate $50,000 to a charity that you choose that you know he's going to hate? And the guy was like gleeful, did the same thing on the other side. So that 100 grand was given to charity, but it was done where I'm going to make you give $50,000 to, whatever. And then the other guy had to do the same thing. And they got their pound of flesh out of it. Now, other cases it's more altruistic and it's kind and some loving, wonderful thing can happen. But that's not reality. You have to speak into the ears that are hearing you, put information into the vessel in front of you for who that person is and what they want, because that's just pragmatism. Wanting everyone to be the way you are is why we have flat foreheads, because we our heads against the wall.
Well, and I think, you mentioned a couple of things because I'd love for people to have kind of some signposts to watch for, right? It all starts with tension, right? And paying attention to that and not running from it, hiding from it, trying to shove it under the rug. I think the listening and the curiosity piece can really get bumbled. What gets in the way? Because I feel like you don't get past square one, right? If you're not willing to engage in the dialogue and really listen, whether you're actually just physically listening or really listening for the deeper things, which I think takes time and skill to develop, right? Clearly,
or even pretending to listen. That even honestly has value. Let's say I hate you so much and you're saying such stupid stuff. I can only pretend to listen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
that works.
Right? It's better.
It's a piece. It works.
What gets in the way of that for people? Is it that the tension is already so high? Is it that there's some internal dialogue going on that they're just blocking everything else out? Can you share with us what do we need to know about that listening piece?
It's partly, but what a giant is ego. So in chapter 2 in the book, actually chapter 1 and 2, I talk about the amygdala. So let me just do a little one-on-one on amygdala for our listeners. The amygdala is 2 little kidney-shaped organs in the back of the brainstem. They are the primitive reptilian brain. It's the fight, flight, or freeze. And I see something in the road and it's a stick or a snake or food. And I decide that in a nanosecond, which is a billionth of a second. That's how quick it happens. So for some people, maybe it's 2 nanoseconds. It's that quick. My brain will look at you and go, friend or foe. That's how quick it can actually happen. And so once the amygdala is triggered, what happens is the prefrontal cortex, which is underneath literally the forehead, where the higher brain, logic, reasoning, rationale stuff happens, goes into what's called a refractory state. Because we've shoved people in MRIs and we can tell that. 20 minutes. So that means the prefrontal cortex goes dark.
It's bound up for 20 minutes. Yeah.
So if my amygdala is triggered, or if I can see that your amygdala is triggered, what do we tend to do? Give you more data. more facts, more persuasion, more arguing. It's foolish to do that. It's not only can they not hear it, what you've done is you've triggered more of a feeling of powerlessness in them, which makes the amygdala more activated and makes the refractory state last longer. So as soon as you notice that someone's amygdala has been triggered, back the heck up. I mean, literally, you should be hearing in your brain, beep, 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 beep. Back up. Stop all conversation. Stop all pressure. Do anything you can to make the person feel a sense of power, because the amygdala is always triggered when someone is feeling powerless.
Yeah.
And powerless is even the bully. I'm going to dominate you.
Yeah.
That is a feeling of powerless because you're not letting me dominate you. Why won't you let me do what I want? It doesn't matter if what they want is right or ethical or honorable. It doesn't matter. It's what they're doing. So if you back off, and I may do something like, you know what? Are you hungry? Break for lunch now. What would you like to eat? Where should we go? What should we order in? What's the temperature like in here? Should we make it cooler? Do you want to get out of this room? Take a walk. Anything that the other person needs or wants gives them a sense of power, gets them to calm the heck down. And what do you have to wait? 20 minutes. It's nothing. It's nothing. Then you can circle back around to whatever data points you want or discussion or where is you're trying to go. Just this one thing I'm trying to teach people will dramatically improve your interactions with everybody, absolutely everybody. And it's foundational to holding the calm, because the reason I use that as a title is I came up with that for myself. If I have to interact with somebody, my amygdala can get triggered. I'm a human like everyone else. You poke me, I'm going to get annoyed. And I would go, I'm holding the calm. I'm holding the calm. I'm holding the calm. What did that take? 2 seconds?
Yeah.
And it says to my amygdala, you have choices. You have options. You are not powerless. You have tools. What do you choose to do? Now, from that place, I may make very different choices than I would make when my amygdala is crazed and I want to cry or run or scream or, do something like that. And then every interaction, the person who has the power is the person that can tame their own amygdala, deal with yours. So I always tell people, there's a bully or someone who's a screamer or yelling. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times someone will say, oh, I don't want them at the session, or we can't meet with him. He's just, or she, or they're just too volatile. I'll say, I want him right next to me. If they have any say-so or any ability to sabotage what we might be doing, I want him right next to me because I know I can handle him. And the person who is the worst is 90% of the time the most insecure. And all they need is validation, reassurance, being a part of the solution. And now all of a sudden they become the architect of the solution because that's their self-interest. That's their ego. It's, and I'm not saying that you snap your fingers and this happens, but I kind of lay out a pathway for this to happen. You can do this. I mean, this can be done. You don't have to be a Cirque du Soleil performer. You don't need to be a lawyer. You don't need to have a PhD in hoo-ha, hoo-ha. You can do this. That's the whole point of me getting this book out into the world.
What, for folks that are listening going, okay, so I'm going to recognize the early signs of fight, flight, or freeze, like calm things down, right? Help shift that feeling of who has the power. But for folks that are thinking like, okay, I recognize fight, like if somebody's getting agitated or whatever, right? You can sense some of those. What about for somebody who's just getting quiet or is in the freeze or flee state, right? How do you, because you may not recognize that initially.
Good. Once they stop talking, that means you're talking too much if you didn't notice it.
Yeah.
So I would say, you know what? I've been dominating the conversation. I'm so sorry. Should we take a break? How would you like, what should we discuss next? Because your opinion is actually very important to me. It matters to me. And I'm sorry that I've been talking too much. What did that just do to the other person's amygdala?
Right. Like,
instantly, friend or foe? Boom.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you weren't talking too much. I've just had a rough day,
I'm
or
tired. Yeah.
I'm tired. They're not usually going to say, yeah, you were dominating, right? Sometimes, I mean, in a spousal relationship, they will, but not always, in business.
Yeah.
But see that's what I just did there so
Mm.
subtly. It was all about power,
Mhm.
ownership, acknowledgement. But who really had the power in the interchange? Me,
Yeah.
not the person who shut up and clammed up and who thought they were taking the power.
Yes.
Now, all of a sudden, we get to change it in a different direction, and we get to talk about it in a different way. And that's the whole piece about speaking to the ears that are hearing you.
Mm.
Who's in front of you? What's happening? And you're cruising along thinking everything's fine. And then at some point, you're going to realize it's not. Okay, stop.
Yeah.
But remember the couch story? Stop. I use another analogy because analogies are how people think. There's a bomb in the town square. That guy waddles out in his Michelin suit. He doesn't just start cutting stuff. Looks, he diagnoses. What do I have here? So in any interaction, you want to be able to do that. And so, but you can't if your amygdala is triggered.
Mm-hmm.
I'm holding the calm. I'm holding the calm.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say you need a break. A bathroom break is a great escape. People in the olden days would take a smoke break. I can't tell you the number of cases I resolved on smoke breaks, walking around with people, but I'm hungry. Let's get some pizza, or I really need to go to the bathroom. Now I can collect myself. How am I going to handle this? What am I going to say? What am I going to do? And in the book, I give people a ton of sentence stems because in the moment, you don't always think of what to say.
No.
People put it on a Post-it note by your phone or computer. Put it on a note in your phone so that in the moment you can look at it and go, so, and then you can go into it. And I give a technique in one of the chapters called VUX that I created called Validate, Understand, Clarify, Summarize. It's a 4-step process to handle any situation, anything at all. And what I tease people is they skip the validate and understand, and they go right to clarify and summarize. And so the analogy I want to give our fine feathered friends who are listening here is don't just jump into bed, have a little wine and roses first, right? It's that way in love relationships. It's that way in interpersonal relationships, and to validate and understand. And part of the reason I named it Vox is because you can tell someone to go vuck themselves. And now that I've said that, nobody's going to forget it, are they?
Right. Well, that those are hugely important steps in that process. As not having read your book yet, which I look forward to reading, I early on in my own legal career, I think it was maybe my second year, I started studying alternative dispute resolution and ended up volunteering in small claims court, basically for the duration of my law school experience. And so I gained loads of experience. And this was not, by the way, like shuttle style mediation, which is what happens most often in the legal context, where people are actually in different rooms and somebody's facilitating the conversation. This was face-to-face in the same little hot room in the back of the courthouse, trying to help two very mad parties resolve something on the spot. And the interesting part is I learned in a hurry the importance of literally restating back to somebody, it seems like you're really feeling blah, 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 right? Fill in the blank, and validating what the other party could not validate for them, and vice versa, right? And literally walking them through this process of restating in a way that both parties could hear and understand, they're validating their experience and then looking for that understanding, and essentially a very similar process. And it was amazing to watch how quickly they would diffuse. It was like, okay, I'm being seen, and this is happening in front of the party who's hurt me, and they can hopefully hear it in this new way, right? Because they're both forced to listen. It's a forced process, and they could not continue on to the actual proceeding unless they went through this first.
Well, but part of it too was that the person who's upset is, don't tell me I'm crazy. Heather gets it.
Yes.
So if Heather gets it, I'm not crazy. I hope you're listening too.
Yeah.
As subtle as that is to the ego, somebody else just listening and validating what they say, they can still think you are completely crazy and totally wrong. And what I would give our listeners a quick, cheating, easy way is if you can repeat back everything they said. It's called mirroring or reflective feedback. It's obviously the better thing to do. But let's say you can't. Let's say someone droned on for 15 minutes and I only remember what they said, right? All you have to do is repeat the last 3 or 4 words that they said. And then he didn't eat the pie. And then he didn't eat the pie. You get 80 to 90% of the value of the whole reflective feedback. And all you got to do, and I urge all of our listeners, try that today. Just listen to somebody say anything. And at the end of it, repeat the last 3 or 4 words, and they'll go, you got it. That's right.
Isn't it amazing how much we want somebody just to hear us? And the other thing that I think is really important is distinguishing, because clearly you don't always have the benefit of a mediator in the room, right? And you have learned how to do that for people. But if you're the individual in the heated discussion or the tense situation or whatever it is that needs to be diffused, understanding that you can acknowledge somebody's viewpoint without agreeing with it is huge. Being able to say, if I were in your shoes, I'd probably feel the same way. Doesn't mean that you agree with what they're saying or agree with what they want. The second you can do something like that, doesn't have to be like that. Oh my gosh, the people just, they drop so much of the fight. Like, okay.
Would you like me to give you a couple of different scenarios for that? Okay?
Yes, I would
because
love
what you
that.
just did was very skillful. And there are times when you can be skillful because you're not so threatened and challenged. And what I'd like to do is to do the advanced class when either you're not so skillful or you're so pissed off you can't think. You can't
tensions
breathe.
are high.
You're so angry. I cannot say to you, if I were in your shoes, I would feel that way, because if I were in your shoes, I would not. And I think you're acting ridiculously or unethically or horribly. So what do I say then? What you say to somebody is, I can see your passion. I can see your commitment. I can see your dedication. I can see how important this is to you. All of that is true.
Yes, that's true.
You can say that. And the trick I'll give to our listeners, if you're dealing with someone, we're doing an advanced class here, can't stand the sight of them. Like, it's just so hard to deal with them.
Yeah.
Inside your head, ask yourself one question. Would this person pull my kid out of a burning car? And if the answer to that is yes, which 95% of the time it's going to be,
yes,
you just did a paradigm shift for your amygdala to where, okay, maybe there's something redeeming about them, only a little, but maybe something. That creates the opening into which you can do the skillful stuff you just talked about. Reflective feedback, mirroring, paradigm shifting, all the cool, wonderful, techniques, so much of the stuff that we have in Holding the Calm, but you have to get to that place. And it's hard when, the stakes are high and it's not all kumbaya, let's put our hands around each other and sing and run through a meadow, because that is not real life. Chocolate cake is fattening and broccoli is not. It should be the other way around.
Dang it.
When I die, God and I are going to have a conversation about that.
We got it all wrong, God. I know. Oh. One thing that you said at the very beginning that I want to wrap back around to, because I feel like it's really important, and especially right now in the time where I know, because personally it's happened, there are millions of people around this country who have lost friendships, have lost family members, personal dynamics have fallen apart, the ability to relate has broken down. And, it's so painful. And I think so apparent to so many people how badly we need skills in this department. And you said you don't start in the middle going direct on, right? You start around the edges. And I don't know if this is the same thing. What came to mind for me And I know I've got to be respectful of your time because we're bumping right up against the hour. So I'll try to say this quickly, but there's a concept called multiplexing where you meet a person and you're able to connect on more than one point, right? Which strengthens the relationship. And I thought, with any human, it seems like we should be able to multiplex, which let's pretend we have a major disagreement on a major connection point or topic or whatever it might be. But surely there are a little bit like the car example. There are things outside of that direct head-on point that we can agree on, right? Regardless of
don't
how
even
we feel.
ask to agree. Don't even get to agree.
Yeah.
That's even too high a standard.
Mm-hmm.
Just look for it. Just look, that's all you've got to do. And that will shift the filter and the paradigm inside you. Let's use abortion as an example. You're a baby killer. Get your hands off my body. Whoa, that's pretty polarized, right? And so if that's a really important issue to me, and I'm trying to get you to understand, and you're just arguing with me, you're not going to get anywhere. Yeah. But if I start with would you pull my kid out of a burning car? Well, the answer is yes. What is good about this person? What do I like about this person? Forget that. Put that off to the side, whatever that issue is. I guarantee you will find good things about them and valuable things about them, but you don't look for them. So look for them and speak to that. And then the magic of what happens, I guarantee you, is their position will soften because you're not as stupid as I thought you were. Kind of sort of understand a little bit. Yes. And neuroscience has shown we have 183 cognitive biases. One of them is the bias of reciprocity. It just works in humans. If I'm a monkey, I give you a banana, you're going to give me a mango. Okay, that's just kind of the way it works. And so I do for you, eventually you're going to want to do for me. Now there's sociopaths and there's narcissists and all that kind of stuff, but we fling those labels around quite easily and quite effortlessly. So if you go into the 80-20 rule, 80% good enough, 80% of the time, 80% of the people, your ability to work within the world will magnify. And nobody's going to say to you, for example, in my thing, you read Holding the Calm, or you have Holding the Calm techniques. No, they're just going to say, she just gets it. Yeah. He just makes things happen. She just seems to get along with people. That's what they're going to say. And that's where leadership happens, client trust happens, relationships happen, and less problems happen. So you can be focusing on doing the good stuff of building your business rather than the cleanup operations.
Oh, yes. And on that final point, one thing that I will tell my clients all day long, over and over, is if you think, because this is actually one of the buckets that I address in a framework that I teach, and it is basically, I call it dispute resolution, but it's communication. Indeed. And it is money in your pocket. It is risk management. It is time back in your day to be building and not putting out fires. And, for entrepreneurs and business owners, you need to be building, you need to be funneling all that awesome energy into the good stuff and not have to be dragged backwards by the hard stuff. So
I love it. And Heather, I apologize because I have literally another podcast that's starting right now, but I am happy to come on your show again.
I adore you. I feel like we need a round
part two. I'm happy
Give me the 10-second of one thing that you wish people knew, most people knew that they don't.
Honestly, I wish they knew the techniques of holding the calm. And what I tell people is go to the website, holdingthecalm.com. I've got about 80 podcasts that I've been on every topic, from kids and parents to workplace, to leadership, to entrepreneur, to vision. And you sign up and it's free. I don't sell out the list or anything like that. And then once a week or a couple times a month, when I think of something cool, I send it out to people. Because my personal goal in this is to just disseminate this message out into the world. You can be more powerful. You can handle this stuff. You can wipe the spaghetti sauce up when it's wet. You don't have to be dealing with caca doo-doo all the time. Life can be better. Do this holding the calm stuff.
Just do it. Oh, I love this so much. If you're listening, pop over and get the links to connect with Hesha, to find her book. We will share all of those things in the show notes at legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Hesha, I'm so glad to know you. I look forward to being in touch. Go enjoy your next conversation.
You're awesome.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful. So we're going to stop